Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. How's it going, David?
It's going well, Jesse. Busy week, and every week goes by so fast. I can't believe it. Every time we get to Thursday, I'm like, we have podcasts again today. It's amazing how fast every week goes. But we have a great guest today, so I'll let you do the introductions.
We do have a great guest today. Today's guest is Fariba Zamaniyan, VP of Data and Advertising at TiVo. And Fariba has been on the podcast multiple times before. And even before we had Deconstructing Data, she was an original guest on our, sort of early idea fireside chats that we were doing just on YouTube. And that originally inspired Deconstructing Data. So we're definitely glad to have her back. She's a recognized leader and media industry expert with a proven career of success in the development and scale of products that monetize data and technology for advertising. Fariba is someone we're grateful to get to work with on a number of projects, as we're proud partners with TiVo. And it's a privilege to be able to work with TiVo to help more advertisers improve their return on ad spend by targeting their consumer audiences deterministically. And as always, Fariba, it's a pleasure to have you here. Let me bring you into the screen.
Hi, everybody. So good to be back. Nice to see you.
Great to have you back. It's been a while, but great to have you back. Yeah, let's kick it off a little bit. I know that you've been on a bunch of times before, but for those that may be watching or listening, maybe kick it off with a introduction. Little information about your background and how you got to TiVo, and then we can kick into what TiVo is doing today.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it quick because that take 45 minutes in itself. My name is Fariba Zamaniyan, and I am Vice President leading our television data sales and advertising initiatives. TiVo is a brand that is near and dear to me. I know it's got very high recognition in the marketplace, but often, most folks still really aren't sure what we're up to these days. In fact, we've been up to quite a bit. I've been with the organization for 13 years. Really, it's been, we've had several acquisitions. The most recent is by Xperi, who is the holding company that owns the brand TiVo, as well as some other notable brands in the audio space, DTS, for example, and Enhanced IMAX when it comes to bringing the movie experience in home. TiVo is a brand that we all know because of the DVR. But really what we've been is a software company working B2B over the last 13 years that I've been a part of it. And what brought me to TiVo was the innovation and being a pioneer again and changing up the industry of capturing data from set-top boxes on a passive basis to build a big data set that would enable the industry to passively identify audiences based on their viewing behaviors, which is all done deterministically. And as part of that, we've evolved over the years, supporting the industry through its transition from one that's been very heavily focused in linear as the basis for wide-scale reach of advertising impressions, and migrating into these applications where we can get much more targeted by leveraging linear audiences to target them across their devices in a digital environment. And this is really what's kind of broken open an enormous amount of change that we've undergone in the industry, and has enabled us to have the opportunity to work with BDEX in identity resolution and scaling our audiences to meet the demands of the market. So data is near and dear. Data is cool, but it's not just cool, it's super important. And I think that, with friends and family, when they ask me what I do, I'm starting to get closer to them realizing what is the importance of data, because it's becoming part of the vernacular in our social settings and talking about the importance of data. And I think COVID did a lot of that when we were looking at data of what was happening and changing across the globe in terms of the counts as well as other. And so data in the advertising technology industry has always been there. It's been behind the scenes. But as we've moved forward to where we are today, it's a topic of every conversation. But really breaking it down and deconstructing it is super important because there are areas of opportunity for us to continue to perfect and learn and be transparent about and build upon, so that our future is one that continues to be able to enhance the performance of advertising and the investments that are made against it across devices. So a long answer and a big intro, but hopefully it gets a seed for our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super helpful. Thank you for that. But let's, you're talking about data and you're talking about TiVo. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, the first topic, smart TV data, and let's dig a little further into your thoughts around that and what TiVo is doing there.
So today, what we and myself in particular has built a business at TiVo that's been able to leverage and harness the power of the data that we've been able to collect from linear set-top boxes. And that is the traditional cable pay TV model. The boxes historically were analog based in terms of a coaxial cable that was powering the set-top box, and our software enables the capture of return path data, which effectively is every action that's made on that key, the remote, is being captured. And that includes tune into programming as well as the commercial pods. And it's really a foundational element for our monetization business and practice within TiVo, and has really been one that I think initially started as this byproduct that we realized that we had access to that became monetizable. But now as we go forward into the future, data really is a key ingredient to the overall package that we'll be bringing to market with the launch of our independent TV operating system that will be powering smart TVs for, think of it as more of the long tail manufacturers. Not all TVs are the big three. There's actually quite a bit of choice and selection when it comes to choosing a flat screen, now smart TVs. And we believe very strongly in the power of independence and giving consumers the ability to get to the programming that they want to see rather than swim through a sea of apps in order to find the content that they want to watch. So we're really excited about this next generation for TiVo that is effectively starting in Europe, so in EMEA, and that will be happening later this year with plans to expand as we have another smart TV manufacturer that we'll be announcing in the fall, who will bring us into the US market. And smart TV data is incredibly powerful, similar to linear set-top box, the ability to capture passively on a deterministic basis, viewing and exposure to advertising. But also it's introduced the power of addressability. And that comes with targeted capabilities for very specific audiences to really hone in on who is the primary target for an ad and can I influence them with impressions that will drive a greater return. And so ACR data right now has been limited or behind walls by the leading manufacturers. And so sharing and bringing the industry forward of a centralized or at least accessible syndicated data set has been a barrier for the industry on both sides. You see it as topic of conversation and debate, hotly debated when it comes to currency and standardized measurement, so that we're all put on an equal playing field when it comes to pricing for commercial airtime. And a lot of that, by not sharing that ACR data from those OEMs, makes it difficult to move forward. And so we are very excited to fill a role as an independent provider globally. And that really brings us forward with the industry to help fill those need gaps that they're looking for when it comes to planning, measurement, and then an allocation and buying on a cross-platform basis. So we're not intending to be a smart TV manufacturer. The TVs will be powered by TiVo and our operating system, which has a monetization platform built in. It's a turnkey solution. So we're very excited for this next generation coming back direct to consumer, and the access to the data that we are not going to be behind a walled garden. So I think the message that we've always conveyed is that we're an independent provider supplying the industry, and we're going to continue to do that. And it's super exciting given the needs that are present and very relevant today.
Yeah, that's awesome. You hit on a couple of things that I want to deconstruct. So you brushed over one thing that I think is really important that you mentioned, and you mentioned it really quickly, but I think that it's important to mention it because I think it's very consumer oriented, and it's the idea that when you're on your TV, the programming should be what comes first, right? And so you shouldn't have to think about, which app do I need to go into to get this program, right? You should be able to think about what program do I want to watch and do that seamlessly. And I think that that's one of the great things about the TiVo OS, having seen it firsthand, that I think does really well and better than any other platform that I've seen, so that the consumer can really get directly to the programming that they want. I think that's important. So I wanted to touch upon that. I wanted to mention that further and sort of bring some light to that. The other thing that was really that I think is really interesting going forward is the addressability, and I think that sort of pushes us into the next topic. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges today, right? I mean, we talked about this offline. It's like one of the biggest challenges for advertisers today is addressability. And I think it's part of the sort of big problem that is going on today in mobile advertising, with the changes from Google and from Apple and do not track, all that stuff is creating an addressability problem. Mm-hmm. And so I think to your point, in the CTV world, it's important that going forward, that addressability is, for lack of a better term, addressed. And it's something that we ensure happens so that we can improve TV ad targeting. I've always talked about my frustration with linear TV advertising is that I have to see all these ads that don't relate to me. Yeah. So with CTV, we have that ability. We have that, we're technology forward, and we have that ability to address advertising to the consumer. So that is a really important issue. I'd love to sort of expand on that a little further.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like be careful what you wish for. Like, we want to have, now that we've gotten a taste for the big data and this ability to anonymize and, associate, we're hungry to do as much as we can with it. And we're, as an industry, aggressively pressing this, hyper level targeting that we can do. But the reason why I say be careful what you wish for is because ultimately, the performance of those initiatives and the investments that are made are really what are going to be front and center. And we've been talking about it for the last 10 years, is the evolution of, measurement, planning and targeting and so forth. Evolution ultimately is so that we can get to performance-based measurement. So it's not about impression delivery. It's about the impact for that brand against the target audience. And so the points you just brought up on addressability is really where there are holes. And the ability to effectively reach that intended audience through these vehicles, I don't think we spend enough time getting under the hood to understand the process, the impact of these changes. And this is not going to be the last one. There are more to come, especially as we think about privacy and IP address. We talked about this offline a little bit, and the implications that could have, particularly on CTV advertising, which, you know, really captures the majority of media attention these days when it comes to advertising. So I think it's, you know, what you brought up, David, in these points of these changes that are made and these holes that are in the execution process really stress the demand, and that an advertiser, for example, should press on, you know, transparency. You know, and this isn't the first time we've had to go through this process. You know, every time something is new, it's validated and pressed. And ultimately it comes down to, is it performing? Because if it's performing and impacting my sales, then okay, it's probably working. Is it perfect? No. But what we're talking about here is something that has a very large blemish on it. And, you know, the fill rates, for example, on CTV are not, you know, what sellers in particular are hoping for of supply. And there's some of that is that hesitance because of the new and adapting, but it's going to come down to being transparent throughout the process of where some of these changes are being deployed and the impact that it can have. Because as you and I know, David, in working with identity, you know, the more likely that you have a representative and an actual individual that you're targeting that represents that audience, the greater the significant difference in the outcomes that you will have an impact versus somebody that you think is the target, but really is not. And you're deploying, you know, millions, billions of impressions against them and getting no results. So it's a really important topic, and I think it's just not raised enough as an industry in the headlines.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also one of the other things that we're going to see going forward, and you know, we're doing some of this on our end as well, is AI having an impact on that addressability and the reach as well. And so the idea that as it gets more and more difficult to discern a consumer, you know, by way of identity, we'll be able to employ not only AI like we're doing today within our identity graph, but also employ AI in ad targeting so that the AI can sort of do the learning, you know, with respect to the ad impressions. So delivering ad impressions and figuring out which, you know, regardless of the identity, at that point, you don't need the identity. It's just about targeting, about performance, and then using that performance to improve targeting going forward, and feeding that back to the AI.
I mean, it's like you can't escape a day without hearing that word AI. You know, it's almost at the point where I'm like, oh God, okay, enough already. We know, but it's everywhere. But are we taking away what the positives are and how we can leverage it, which is what you're talking about, and helping not just about, you know, ChatGPT on language, like to your point when we talked offline, as applying it against data and identity. And, you know, yeah, it's a discussion item that we need to, you know, and you guys are exploring it and having the opportunity to get it on a broader scale is, I think, really critical for us to do as an industry. I think what you guys are doing is great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, you know, and I think part of the reason why there's so much discussion about it today is just it's become, you know, I don't want to say easy, but it's become easier to do because of the, you know, not only the computational models and such, but just our ability to collect data at scale and our ability to process data at scale in a cost-efficient manner.
Yeah.
Which couldn't be done before. I mean, before you had to be Google, you had to be Amazon, you had to be Facebook in order to be able to afford to do these things. And now, you know, we're able to take literally trillions of data sets and analyze them within really a short period of time, literally looking at billions of data sets per day, and do this analysis against what we're doing on the identity side to build an identity graph that is essentially much more powerful and able to discern identities across all these billions of data sets in a way that literally you just couldn't do a year or two ago, because it just would have been like, you just couldn't afford to do it unless you were Google or Amazon or Facebook.
Incredible.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the other thing that, not to go off topic a little bit, but most people don't even think about what it costs to process data. Like these are, like you said, you're talking about trillions of pieces of data. These are, used to be incredible investments. And now, innovation is coming through folks like yourself at BDEX that are nimble and thinking about what are the pain points and how can I address those specific pain points, rather than focusing on these like, general, okay, I'm going to build an addressable model. So I think it's really critical to build that kind of partnership in the industry. And I guess for what I think about is like, so who would you partner with to, engage with in order to test this capability?
So it's an interesting question. So, and it's funny thing is we have these conversations every day, and sometimes we're talking to the tech team, or we'll have a sales or a partnership opportunity, and somebody will come in and say, "Hey, I have all this data, and can you help me do this analysis?" And we'll literally go to our engineering team. I'll go to the CTO and ask him. I'll say, "Look, what will it take for us to do that?" And what's cool about it now is he can literally come back to me and say, "We can do that, but it'll cost about $2,000 for us to run that query. Do we want to run that query?" And then like we'll know what it'll cost, and we'll go back to the client and we'll be like, "All right, we have to figure out, what the opportunity here is to try to figure out whether this makes sense for us to do it, and how often do we have to run this query? Is it going to be a daily thing? Okay, that's, here's what it's going to cost to do that, or maybe we can do it monthly or weekly or whatever." But literally, we have these exact conversations with customers, clients, partners that want to, do heavy lifting analysis on their data. Pretty frequently we have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, no, I'd imagine. I think, the one thing that I've learned within this industry is like what seems to be a topic that, is like lower on the priority list and not something that comes front and center, can all of a sudden be catapulted overnight to the headlines and become the, shiny object of the day. Mm-hmm. I can go through history, recent history in advertising, tech, or media of the buzzwords over the years that I think the last time we were chatting, interoperability was the most recent. Right now, AI is the hot topic and buzzword. But I think that what we'll find is this topic area that we're talking about, it is in probably near future going to be front and center, because like we were talking about offline, I mean, this is what had implications on the demise of media math, right?
Yeah, for sure. And going sort of back to that conversation to share with our audience here, like we were talking about the fact that, media math has been on a tear, right? I mean, for years they've been growing and expanding internationally. But then you think about what's occurred over the last 18 or to 24 months with Apple and Google making changes, now limiting tracking and ad targeting, and all of a sudden the ad performance and addressability has gotten worse and worse and worse. And so we're having these conversations with companies literally every day about the same challenges that, media math was having, where, they were, not able to address those ads to, those campaigns for their clients to reach the right audience. And that limited the performance. And so as advertisers started cutting back, all the scale that they had created became, bloat. essentially. And so now all of a sudden they couldn't afford to maintain everything that they built. And so maybe they'll reorganize and scale back and sell off some assets and things like that. And we'll see what happens. But it's an issue. It's an issue that I know everybody's dealing with. And when we get calls all the time, and the conversation and the questions I ask them is, what are your biggest problems right now and how can we help you solve them? And over and over and over, it's addressability and overall performance of their ad campaigns. And so that was sort of the reason why we built the sort of BDX 2.0 identity graph and launching our new identity graph this year, and using, machine learning and AI to sort of build the identity graph in a more intelligent manner. Because what we found is that with these changes, especially with ATT, we have found that there are all these, temporary, some people call them synthetic, but mobile IDs that look like real mobile IDs, but they only exist for a very short period of time for that session. And when someone closes the app or moves on to a different app, they're gone. And a new mobile ID is created for that new session. That's a problem, because that mobile ID appears to be real. It appears to be tied to that consumer. And the only way to know whether it's addressable or not is to go through billions and billions and billions of data sets, looking at tons of data coming in from tons of different sources. And so that's what we're doing. And that's what our platform is doing now. And it's doing an analysis of literally these billions of data sets to try to figure out which of the IDs are actually addressable at any given moment, and which ones were temporary and are no longer around, and throw them aside and say, we can't address those, so get rid of them. And it's been a very effective change. We've seen a highly, much more addressable audience. So we're able to not only support identity graphs for our clients by way of this, by licensing this to them, but also, building audiences like we're doing with the TiVo data that are now much more addressable, because we're using this technology to figure out which IDs are addressable and throwing away the ones that are not.
And that was exactly where I was going to go, into our next topic, is the importance of what you're talking about, and why, TiVo works with BDX is, a key application of our TV viewership data is to leverage it to build reach extension against, target audiences. And so a target audience that we're able to define based on, let's say, exposure or non-exposure to a specific creative ad campaign airing on linear TV. It could be national and local, or just national. And we, working with BDX to ensure that we are extending the reach of our household-based audience, because this is a television set. It's not an individual. So we need to individualize the members of the home so that we can reach them across all of their devices. And working with a partner that can help us ensure that, we are effectively able to isolate and identify who we say they are. So identity really matters. And the process you just outlined, our mobile initiatives as an extension of a glass screen reach initiative, linear, is critical. Given the penetration of mobile phones, the amount of time we all spend on them, and the opportunity to expose brand message is a very viable opportunity for a brand to impact performance from a sales perspective. So yeah, everything you just outlined on the mobile ad ID, on the do not track, I can't say I read many articles about that topic anymore in the press in this sector, but yet it's a incredibly important topic. And important to us, for our customers that are leveraging our data and then are able to extend against the audiences we built for them. So I can't stress that enough. In putting quality before quantity remains a critical theme, and I don't think that's ever going to change. It shouldn't change. I think we had a blip there in our industry where we sacrificed because we got super excited over big data. You know, I hate even using that term anymore because it's big, but it's data, right? It's about the quality of the data, and the representativity, and the actionability that can be derived from it, to enhance and build up intelligence, reduce risk. I mean, these are the main reasons why we use data. And we can't achieve that end if, you know, what we're leveraging, you know, is flawed, when it comes to identity, which is still super critical.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about the TiVo audiences, when we switched the TiVo audiences over from our old version of our graph to the new graph, we saw some amazing results. I don't know if you saw those results, but I think on one of the platforms, it was like I think we did 5 times the reach on that platform, just with that change with the new identity graph. So it's working, you know, and that's what's awesome.
Yeah. And that's really what we like to hang our hat on in the market, is about quality. And I know customers that work with us that are recipients of our viewership data feed, in addition to what we compartmentalize as audiences that are pre-built and scaled, working with BDEX to do so. It is that, you know, we have always been very focused on the quality of the construct of the data, its capture, and its representativity. The scale may not be one where we're going out there and touting, you know, the millions and billions, you know, like that Austin Powers kind of thing. But you know, there was a point in our industry when we got really excited, and it was all about, you know, the size. And I think we've been able to, you know, we've been in the background really building our business and importance in this industry and working with key partners like BDEX, because quality was more important to us than the quantity, and having impact and results. And we're continue to strive for that. So yeah, the changes you guys have instituted have mean a tremendous change, and we're looking forward to seeing the impact continue.
That's great to hear. Well, we've pretty much covered all the topics: smart TV data, we've got addressability and reach. Is there anything either of you would like to add on any of these before we move on?
I mean, I think we'd be here for another hour if we did, right?
If we did. Well, then let's transition into tech stack. So Fariba, we'd love to hear, what are some of your favorite tools that you use on your day-to-day basis that help you improve, you know, your work quality?
I will have to say, what has become a game changer for me recently is using the huddle feature in Slack. I like, it is so convenient to not have to, because, you know, you're on Slack all the time with folks, you know, just instead of sending an email, because who wants another email? Can't read through all of them. And I can't believe I didn't really use it until, I don't know, maybe about 4 months ago, maybe like towards the latter part of Q1. Somebody had said, "Oh, I'll huddle you," and I was like, "What's that?" I had no idea what that was. Like, well, we're not in the same location. I can't huddle with you. So, and then I started using it. I'm like, this is so great. Like, that you could just pick up the phone and like chat with somebody. I love that. It's honestly, like, Slack has become my new favorite vehicle for just staying connected with team members and external clients too. Like, we've set up channels with external clients, so we don't have to keep sending emails. It's just increased efficiency so much, and keeps the conversation short. You know, it doesn't have to be a huge email. It could just be a quick. And the way you write it is acceptable. Like, they don't look at you and be like, "Oh, typo."
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I'm definitely guilty of typing too fast in those chat channels, but that's the point, I guess.
Yeah.
But Fariba, we have a little bit of time. So I believe we asked you this last time, but let's see if maybe your answer has changed a little bit.
Okay.
So if you could go back when you first came into say the advertising industry, what is the number one piece of advice you would have given yourself?
I would say it's a little bit compounded in my advice. So my first thing is that be proud. Because I've always worked in data, working with data was not very cool. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't that, when you get together with your young friends, 20 something, comparing what you do and your job, it was not cool. And some may say it's not cool today, but I think it is because of how important it is. And so I would say be proud, regardless of, what it is, you are making a contribution. And if you are confident and you believe in the impact that what you're working on may have, and have the patience to see it through, kind of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. I've been working with this particular product offering with this organization collectively for 13 years. And I will tell you, the first 7 years were not easy. Nobody in this market really wanted to hear or talk about changing the way advertising is planned and no less executed, and certainly not measured from a currency perspective. So seeing what's happened, it really is kind of like made me think like, the thoughts I had in those early days were like, nah, scratch that. Believe in yourself and be proud of it. It'll make a difference.
Oh, that's really great. And, going off that, are there any lessons you've learned along the way from, past jobs or this current role that you think everyone should know?
I think that it's important to stay focused and confident. I think finding an advocate internally within your organization who supports you and can help you when you bounce ideas, or you've got a creative initiative that you want to pursue. I think having that level of support helps reinforce your confidence so that you're not feeling like you're going at it alone. I think from a data perspective, I think that I touched on it a little bit before, but it really has been about quality for me. Staying persistent in finding an answer. There's always an answer to be found. And many times we give up, but the troubleshooting, getting where you want to be, so knowing what that goal is and what you want that product to be, you can get there and not give up. And I think there were many, many times along the way that we could have given up. But having the right advocates to support you and understand what drives you, it really keeps you, focused on what your goals are and how to achieve them. So, that sounds very fluffy, but I really believe in it because it comes back to that whole data thing where I had this quantitative knack and, but yet had this creative side. And so I brought it together as storytelling. And I feel like I'm an author to some degree, but I never thought it was cool. And now I look back and I'm really proud. And I think everybody should feel that way, regardless of your role.
That's really awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that advice.
Yeah.
And in closing, Fariba, where can listeners reach you if they, like what they hear and they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can see the spelling of my name. Just do a search. There aren't many of us with this combination. So feel free to reach me on LinkedIn, or you can visit our website at TiVo.com, and you'll see an area for where you can get connected if you have questions, or feel free to reach me at my first name last name at TiVo.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks to you guys. It was great to see you.
Yeah, it was great to have you on again. And I'm sure we'll hear from you again on this show, and look forward to doing it again sometime in the future.
Always
Absolutely. Fun. I believe we might even already have something booked. I'm not sure.
You can't get rid of me just yet.
But any audience members, we hope you'll check out BDEX's Omni IQ. I'm going to pull the QR code up here, but if you are seeing this later on a podcast, you can simply go to beatx.com and click try for free our app and upload your first party customer data, and you get some complimentary analytics on it. And if you like what you see, you can upgrade to learn more about your audience, and then use that app to expand your audience and find more people like your best customers. So we'd love to hear from listeners as well. You can reach us at info@beatx.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make this show better for you. So thank you all again so much for coming, and thanks again, Fariba.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, David.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.